Welcome back to another Film Geek movie review. Today, after the day job, I'm going to hit the road to check out the latest Pixar film, Elemental. So what is Elemental about? Well, I can't really get a lot of the plot details from the trailer, but it's a world where the elements are living beings. So air, fire, water, and earth are all like anamorphic creatures that exist in this city together. And from what I've kind of gathered from just information I've seen online and all, it's supposed to be a Romeo and Juliet sort of romance story. And it also has a little comedy thrown in there, of course. Well, this film looks like it's going to be a perfectly acceptable Pixar film. Its animation looks alright, nothing terribly new being brought to the table by the look of it, but it looks like it's going to be very pretty. Now, I have gone into plenty of Pixar films thinking I'm going to see something average, and I still get my mind absolutely blown. So just because this trailer isn't giving me a lot of like, wow, Toy Story kind of vibes, it could still be a pretty amazing animated film. I had that buzz about Coco when it first came out. When I first saw the trailer, I was like, well, it looks really cute, but I don't know if it's going to be all that. And then I went and saw it, and my mind was just absolutely blown. And I love that movie. So hopefully this film is going to be a lot like Coco, where maybe the trailer itself doesn't express exactly how amazing and beautiful the story and the animation really is. And you know what? Trailers, they don't need to tell us everything now, do they? It's always nice to be surprised. So guys, enough of me yammering. I gotta get out the door because, well, I've got work to do. They need me down at the museum. They can't do a doggone thing without me, I guess. But, and I know they're watching this. I know you're watching this. So anyways, guys, it's time for me to get out of here and hit the road. And I'll be back here in just a bit for your review of Elemental. Welcome back. Just getting home. And you know what, guys? This film was cute. It wasn't bad at all. It wasn't some grand, huge, epic tale, but it was a cute little story about two people. Okay, so let's get this started, shall we? We're going to get this with the negatives first, and then off to the positives, so we can end the video on the ever so important high note. Okay, so getting things started, I wouldn't necessarily call this a negative, me personally, but for somebody that is expecting a typical Pixar film with huge stakes and a grand adventure and a lot of stuff going on, this is not for you. This film is a much smaller, much more intimate story. This is not like something like Monsters, Inc. or Up. There is no kind of grand scale things going on in this film. It is all much more smaller and much more personal. Even when you think that there's going to be high stakes, there is, but it's not necessarily what the film is about. It's more of an event that happens that really helps bring the two of our main characters together. This film is actually more of a romantic comedy, or just a romance, mostly because I don't feel like there was a whole lot of comedy in this movie. That's another negative. I didn't find this movie particularly funny. There are attempts at jokes. They didn't land real well. A lot of people in the audience that were with me, they weren't really laughing at it also. There were a couple of kids in there too, even though it was a later showing. There were a couple of kids in there too, and even they didn't really chuckle at some of the more slapsticky points. It almost seemed like they were like, insert joke here, and they just didn't fit. Like, the story would have actually have been better, or the film would have probably been better if they would have just, either just gotten rid of the jokes altogether or just kept them to an extreme minimum and just focused on the relationship between our two main characters, because that is where the movie shines. Okay, moving into the positives. Like I said, this is a smaller, much more intimate story for Pixar, and that is something that I really enjoyed about this. It makes me think of taking a chance. Now, it's not necessarily a chance in the animation department, but in the storytelling department for Pixar, it's a little bit different because it doesn't have, again, I keep saying grand adventure, but that's really what it boils down to. The film has much lower stakes. Again, there is something that happens and there are stakes and there is events and so on and so forth. But it's not the driving factor of the film. The actual thing is the relationship between the two main characters, Ember and Wade, pardon me. And they are great. The two main characters are really good characters, and this, again, is where the film shines. The characters in this movie are outstanding. Each one of the elements are fun. They have their own unique traits that follow in line with what their element is. It's a very well animated film, even though, like I was saying, they don't take a lot of chances in the animation department in this movie. It is still a very by-the-books Pixar kind of looking film, but it's still good. It's still solid. It still works. Personally, I don't feel like the animation was to the level of something like Coco, but that was mind-boggling good. This one really is very solid animation, but again, much like I keep saying, it's on a much smaller scale. The voice acting in the film is really good. All of the actors do a really good job. It's on par, again, with the quality you would expect from Pixar. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, if you really want to see a Pixar movie, then this is definitely for you because it hits the right notes. It's not as an emotional of a story as you would find in a Pixar film. At least I personally didn't notice it. I think that some people might, if you identify with the characters a lot more than I did, maybe it will pull at the heartstrings a little bit more for you than it did for me. I did enjoy the characters, I did enjoy a smaller, lower stakes story, but in the end, it doesn't necessarily match to the level of a lot of the other Pixar films out there. I keep going back to stuff like Coco, Monsters, Inc., Toy Story, the big tentpole kind of films that they have made. This one, I don't feel is definitely to that level, but it doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad film. I think it's just because it's a much smaller story. So it's not going to have that same adventure element that gets us all kind of hyped up. It's not as action-packed. But that's not a bad thing. It's still a good movie, and it's still worth your time checking it out in theaters. I did see this on one of the large, big, kind of IMAX screens with a large surround sound and all that good stuff, and I feel like it did bring a little bit more to it. But again, any old movie screen will work, but get out there, check this film out. It wasn't a half bad time. Okay guys, well that's all I have for you today. If you liked what you saw here today, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications, and give me the old thumbs up if you like what you're seeing. And if there's one more thing you could do, folks, that is keep watching movies. You know I'm gonna.